ultimately, this struggle is about more than money. We have something they don't have. We have conviction, we have solidarity, and we have right and we have history on our side. We also have Seattle's newly minted socialist city council member, the first in modern history, Kshama Sawant.
My brothers and sisters, when people stick around in a really warm room for over 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and when low-wage workers and retirees on fixed income make donations to a working-class campaign, we know we have hope. And I really appreciate you sticking around to listen to my words as well. And I wanted to start first by thanking Katie Wilson for being a beautiful chair. And for all the brilliant activism that the Transit Riders Union has done to bring together people who are highlighting the injustice, the transit injustice that is happening in our city. I also want to thank Jess Spear, who you just heard from. She talked about herself as being a member of Socialist Alternative, and she was a volunteer coordinator for our campaign last year. What she did not tell you about herself is that she is also a fully qualified climate scientist, but for some curious reason, she chooses to spend her time making very, very, very little money as an activist. I want to thank everybody who worked on our campaign last year, Socialist Alternative, people who aren't members of Socialist Alternative, but who clearly understand the need for solidarity, the need to be together to organize ourselves. I want to thank the airport workers, the fast food workers, hotel workers. I want to thank Joe Higgins for being here and bringing us an international message of solidarity. And I liked what Dave Freiboth, Brother Dave, said. This hall was built for exactly like this. And how many decades has it been that we haven't had this? Entire generations have seen a plunge in their standards of living. But this is not just about standards of living. It is about dignity in existence. And we are fighting for that very dignity here today. And we are here to take this movement forward. And I think we all know how incredibly different today is. This is January 2014. Just think where we were on January 2013. We ran a campaign for the State House in 2012. We were calling for $15 an hour then. We were talking about taxing millionaires. We were talking about the need for affordable housing and rent control. And they called us stupid. They said, these crazy socialists, they're so out of touch. They don't know what's going on. I invite the corporate media to look at us today. When we say minimum wage, we mean all workers. A universal living wage is what we are fighting for. And I agree with, again, I'm going to agree with Brother Dave and also maybe disagree a little bit. But I agree that while we are justly and correctly celebrating this moment, because Remember, this is not just about celebrating in an empty manner. This celebration forces us to recognize the latent power in the working class, because it is all too easy to get demoralized and feel disempowered and feel like nothing can change. So, by God, we should be celebrating this moment. This is also a moment for recognizing what we are up against. Corporations, business in general, are already talking to government officials and also talking to the not-so-official spokespeople of the government. They don't like this at all. They don't like having to engage in a discussion about $15 an hour, but you are forcing them to do it. But that's step one. You force them to come to the table. But that's not going to be enough, because now they will start talking, and they have already started talking about phasing it in over many, many years. What should our response be? We have to say, minimum wage has reduced in value over 3 decades. Incomes to the 99% have stagnated. Workers have been phased right into poverty. We don't want any more phasing in. And as a city council member, I have the pleasure of talking to business people. And as I've said before, that is an important task, because I'm representing our interests when I go there. But they have said to me, "Oh, are you sure workers want 15? You know, I have to say, as a labor activist, this gives me so much joy. They say to me, "Oh, are you sure workers want 15? Numbers have no meaning. Don't they want comprehensive solutions? Don't they want healthcare, education, and housing?" But when business stands in front of you and says, 15 has no meaning, don't workers want other things, that should be challenged by us as disingenuous and dishonest. What I say to them is, I don't know what you're talking about, because the low-wage workers who are going to benefit from 15 have none of these things. Are you pretending that you're going to give them health care instead of 15? Are you pretending that you're going to increase funding for public education instead of 15? And if you don't understand that 15 has meaning, then try living for a week on 15. And even that is going to be hard for many of the elite. They will bring out small businesses, but we've learned our lessons from CTAC, right? We don't need to go too far back in history. We saw in CTAC that there were many not so small businesses parading as small businesses. How many of you have heard of Cedarbrook Lodge? This was a business that was very, very vocal in the CTAC battle, and the owner would burst into tears at the hearing, saying he's going to have to, all his workers would be destitute. But these are not small businesses. These are, very big-sized businesses. They're not McDonald's, but there's a huge number of big businesses that are going to pull out the small business card in order to discourage you from your moral track, in order to make you feel like you're somehow being unjust by asking for a decent standard of living for yourself. And yes, it is true that genuinely small businesses are getting wiped out, but that is not because workers are being paid too much. That's because that is in the nature of capitalist system to crush small businesses and give all the advantage to big business. Capitalism overwhelmingly sets up small businesses for failure and allows big business to devour the economy. The reason small businesses are failing is because of the Walmartization of our nation, because of Amazon, Starbucks, and all the fast food corporations. But brothers and sisters, here is the bottom line. The cost of living to a worker in a small business is no different than for a McDonald's worker. Small business cannot be protected on the backs of workers. The government should tax big business in order to support small business, and small businesses and working people should stick together to fight for 15. And when we get 15, we can fight for other things, for rent control, for a municipal bank, to restructure the B&O tax so that it puts the burden of taxation not on the smallest and the most struggling businesses, but on the giant businesses and the financial institutions. But when you talk about government taxing big business to subsidize small business, again, people will tell you, that's crazy socialist talk. Government cannot support business. This is a free market. Brothers and sisters, remind them of the tens of billions of dollars that the state has given away to the Boeing CEOs over decades. Remind them that they called a special session in Olympia to give Boeing the largest single corporate handout in US history. What has happened so far is exciting. The CTAC initiative has been a shot in the arm for workers everywhere. The mayor's executive order to give $16 an hour, $15 an hour for all city employees is a welcome step. But it is really important for us in this room to draw out the correct political lessons and not be taken in by the corporate narrative. None of this would have happened in the first place if workers had not moved into struggle, forcing the political establishment to pay heed to their demands. And if workers had not chosen to go out into a grassroots campaign to bring in a voice of their own into City Hall, we did not get this from the kindness of business people. I am serving on the mayor's committee, and as I have said before, I will do my best to represent the interests of Seattle's working people. But this is not the time to let up. It would be a big mistake to say, oh, the city government officials will take care of this for us. Some of the same businesses that bitterly opposed the $15 an hour initiative in CTAC find themselves on this committee. Do you expect them to fight for you and for 15? And a simple question is, if they are so committed to 15 in Seattle, why don't they drop the lawsuit against CTAC Prop 1? If we don't mobilize our forces in this historic opportunity that has been handed down to us, then it will be a betrayal of our own responsibility. We will not get what we are fighting for. History is a warning. Too many examples of opportunities lost for the working class. And yes, everybody who says the left needs to learn to work together, they're absolutely correct. But do you know what is the most important thing we need to do on the left in order to be working together? That is to stand unapologetically for the interests of the working class and working together on the left also means breaking our ties from those who have betrayed us again and again and again. Breaking our ties from the two big business parties who haven't stood up for us and have been the leaders in carrying out this race to the bottom. That's what means to me for the left to come together. And you will hear a lot about me. You will hear that you can't be an activist and a legislator. Somehow becoming a legislator corrupts you automatically. I think we have to understand, yes, there are great dangers everywhere, and history is littered with countless examples of well-meaning people who took on the center stage, who took on elected positions, and got very easily co-opted and corrupted. But co-optation and corruption is not an automatic process. It happens when we don't understand that we have to pick our side very clearly. It happens when you think that I can go to my office in City Hall and serve both big business and working people. It happens when you run campaigns that are not democratically organized, campaigns where working people, ordinary people don't have a voice. Brothers and sisters, we have shown that you can run a truly democratic campaign that represents, without hesitation, without ambiguity, our interests collectively, and we can hold ourselves accountable to each other. But for that, we need democratic organizations of our own, independent of big business and of the parties that represent them. And building this movement is not just about 15. It is about getting organized to begin a pushback against the decades of assault on our living standards, against the impoverishment and disintegration of entire communities of the working class. And when business and their political representatives say, why are you hung up on a number? We should talk about comprehensive solutions like healthcare and education. Tell them, don't worry, 15 is just the first step. Tell them, once we win that, we will be back to win the rest of our rights. And lastly, I want to do my share to contribute to our work in 15 Now. I want to thank everybody, individual and institution, who have endorsed our campaign and have pledged to make this the top priority for yourselves in this year. And I pledge $12.50 every month from my city council salary to 15now.org. That comes to $15,000 a year. But my brothers and sisters, I do not want any personal glory from this. What I want you to do is to determine that you will fight with us every inch of the way, not only for $15, but to generate a vibrant working class movement that is not going to go away this year, but is going to build and build and build and become stronger every year that passes by. And that you'll promise me that if you run into somebody with a six-figure salary, ask them to donate $12.50 a month to 15 Now. I'll stop there.
We are fortunate that our County Labor Council is led by someone with this kind of vision and courage. Let's give it up for Dave Frybo.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Seeing this room packed is very gratifying because this is what this room was built for. You know, I just got to warn you, my tone, I think, is going to be a little different. I got some things I want to say about where we're at. And I want to get kind of serious here. Before I start, I want to congratulate Councilmember Sawant for doing it, getting it done. And to a degree, I want to welcome her to the club of representing others. Because my principle in terms of democratic empowerment is pretty deep. It's a big deal to have others empower you through a democratic process to represent them. That changes things. It changed things in my life. You know, I started like most people. I was an activist. I saw things that weren't fair, and I was willing to give my time to do something about it. And, you know, I like to joke. Those of you that know me know I can be kind of a smart aleck, you know. Thanks, Bob. You know, my kind of sarcastic response to someone's asking me why I do this is, well, I got involved to make a difference, and now I guess I'm part of the problem. But I think the point is that when one transitions from advocacy to a representational status, things change a bit. When I was an advocate, when I was an activist, the only thing that really mattered was what I thought. What I thought and how I projected myself into the process. When I became elected by others to represent them, what I thought changed. It became part of the consideration on how I conduct the business of those I represent. It's a big deal. And of course, I like to tell this story. A movie years ago, I think called City Hall, Al Pacino. I know some of you younger folks probably not familiar. Remember that great scene when John Cusack, his idealistic, young, active, you know, the aide that believed in this politician, found out he was corrupt. Spoiler alert. big city politician. The storyline is he really is corrupt. Pacino gives one of these great speeches, right? This great actor's lines where he says, you know, when I started, I was so consumed with what was right. And as I got into this process of making a difference and actually moving the ball forward, it became so much about the deal that I just lost my way. And I thought, God, I hope to Christ I'm never confronted with that dilemma. Because I'll tell you, when you're in elected leadership, the pressure to actually move the bar, to actually affect change rather than advocate for change is a son of a gun. It's tough. And I'm telling you, what I need to keep that compass is the activism that this room presents. And God bless the labor movement. There's no shortage of that. So, you know, the external challenges are pretty obvious. I mean, we know what they're up to. And what's gratifying right now and what's changed is it's being exposed. You know, years of deregulation and, neoliberal politics, new Democrat economics is finally caught up with the son of a guns. The Great Recession finally did it, just like the Great Depression, finally did them in. And they just can't hide from it anymore. And they're on the defensive. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And I kept waiting. for it to get here. You know, you almost despair when you're doing this stuff. You almost think it's just not going to happen. And it finally, it looks like we've got the opportunity. Now here's what I want to have a serious discussion about. We can blow it. And we have. The left has blown it in the past. And our biggest challenge, of course, is our internal divisions. Now, maybe this isn't supposed to be the environment where we talk about the hard stuff that it takes to make this happen. But I think this is absolutely the time where we need to talk frankly about how we get this done. And I'm going to be critical of everybody in the room, with respect, myself included. You know that our anarchist friends, of course, see power as a problem. Any power is a problem. We know this. We know that they feel the state, the government, is primarily anti-worker. And in fact, this reflects the thoughts of one of our founding fathers, James Madison, the great slave owner, who said, the government's job is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. So when we enter power, when we accept elected representational position, when we sit on the mayor's advisory committee on the minimum wage, as myself and Councilmember Sawant are, we're subject to criticism. And in fact, the criticism has been quite rich. Let me read a couple quotes. This is from an anarchist writer. And, you know, this is good stuff. This is the kind of stuff we need to really consider. With respect, council member, I quote, "We will find ourselves betrayed, isolated, and crushed if we don't remain independent of the Sawant camp and the progressive union bureaucrats and social entrepreneurs who backed her election. Comrades are trying to maintain their anarchist credentials by flippantly dismissing Sciamma as just another progressive Democrat." There's more. On labor. Labor leadership is tied at the hip to the Democratic Party. Labor unions, I can take it. Labor unions bring out tens of thousands of foot soldiers for the Democratic Party to campaign for them. They give them hundreds of thousands of dollars, unquestioningly, unchallengingly, and uncritically. So let's look at what we do in the face of all this criticism. Because, of course, where we're sitting today is owned by organized labor. This facility is brought to you by the labor movement. It's brought to you by bureaucrats like me. So what are our, let's talk about labor for a second. What are our organizational challenges? Please, I know the list is long. We actually represent a membership that reflects the electorate of the country. From Tea Partiers to anarchists, I was elected by those people to represent them. Thankfully, our activist core leans more to the left. Our bureaucratic structures are historically decentralized right now in Seattle. The labor movement of the WTO campaign and marches does not exist in Seattle at this time. We are not centralized in the Central Labor Council, an organization that was formed years ago, bureaucratic institution, to minimize our differences so we can better project our power. That's a primary purpose. That's my job description. Minimize our differences so we can project our power. Let me give you an example of how our differences got in the way. Folks have heard of the Employee Free Choice Act. There was a time, not so long ago, when labor leaders were talking about when the Employee Free Choice Act got passed, which was an attempt in Congress to actually restore the collective bargaining rights of workers. Because as anyone knows, and most of you do in this room, we really don't have collective bargaining rights in this country. We thought that was going to happen. It was so obvious that the need was there. The problem was the campaign that we put together, upper leadership in the AFL-CIO, didn't even listen to what they felt was grassroots leaders like me. That's their little glass house. That some of the elements of that campaign weren't going to resonate with the workers that aren't in this room. That the other side was going to be able to take elements of that campaign and defeat us from within. Now, this is just Dave's view for what it's worth, but in my view, that's what happened. That was a large part of the bad guys' campaign to defeat that campaign. And our echo chamber approach to putting together a campaign and organizations to push something to make things better. So what did we get to do? We got to be very upset and very victimized and very outraged and also very left with no results. Nothing. So in spite of our internal divisions, we have an opportunity here not to fret about them, but to recognize them, to build off of them, so that our power is seamless. That's the hard work of leadership. That's the point of electing leadership. Because, and on top of the brilliant, and I will use their term, marketing of this $15 campaign, the messaging that is brilliant in this campaign, the street heat that this movement is building, that is essential to keep us on task and to keep them honest and let it know what's going on. We also absolutely must be astute at what the inside game is and what they're doing. The best way to keep backroom deals from being cut is to keep the light on it, is to make sure that the people that have been elected to represent you know what they're doing and are accountable to the rank and file. So let me end with this. This is a piece that was written. There's been a lot written out there on the left, in the socialist community, about what just happened here. This is a big deal. You know, I was leaving today, and I told my wife to wish me luck, and she said, "Are you worried?" I said, "No, I'm not that worried about giving a speech. I never saw a microphone I didn't want to talk to." But this is getting really important, I told her. This is it. I told a group the other day that's working on a very vital campaign that I normally would be committing Labor Council resources to, that we can't help them. This is the most important thing that my organization will be working on. So I want to read a piece from someone I know well, haven't always seen eye to eye with, always appreciated her intellect. And it was about the unprecedented collaboration between the different socialist groups in town in this election. And she wrote, "Still, after all the success, sectarianism, putting one's political party above the interest of the class, will be a challenge. Throughout the campaign, Socialist Alternative downplayed their socialist endorsements, favoring the Greens, even though this party promotes the illusion that capitalism can be made kinder and gentler. On the other extreme, the Socialist Workers' Party mostly ignored endorsements from the Freedom Socialists and castigated Councilmember Sawant as a sellout, rather than offering constructive criticism and engagement. Whether the ISO, who endorsed in this campaign, as I understand, somewhat unprecedentedly, will endorse future socialist campaigns remains to be seen. Yet clearly, the time is right for anti-capitalist electoral alliances, and the potential for a quantum leap forward is there if the left can learn to respectfully respect each other and work together." God bless Linda Averill, my sister. Let's go get them. Thank you.
So we all know that the eyes of the nation are on Seattle right now. But the fact is, the eyes of the world are also on Seattle. And when we win $15 an hour this year, there will be reverberations around the world. Our next speaker is Joe Higgins. Joe Higgins has spent many years serving in the Irish Parliament. He is a member of the Socialist Party of Ireland, which is a sister organization to Socialist Alternative. And in 2009 to 2011, he was also the first Socialist Party member of the European Parliament. Welcome, Joe Higgins.
Chairwoman, brothers and sisters, dear friends, it is truly a privilege to have travelled 4,500 miles from Ireland to be with you here today. I bring solidarity from Socialist Party activists in Ireland, Northern Ireland and the South, from the Committee for Workers International, from fellow activists in the Anti-Austerity Alliance in Ireland, which was set up to fight the vicious austerity programme, which after the crash of the property bubble in Ireland 5 years ago, places the entirety of the bad gambling debts of the sharks of the European financial markets and of Irish developers onto the shoulders of working people in Ireland. Throughout the whole of southern Europe, from Ireland through Portugal to Spain and across to Greece, there is an unprecedented, full frontal assault on the livelihoods and living standards of tens of millions of workers and on the working class generally. Savage cuts in the wages of public sector workers, ferocious attacks on the pensions of workers, public and private, cuts in public services such as health and education, a raft of new taxes and increases in existing taxes, taking tens of billions of euro from the pockets of workers, of pensioners, the unemployed and the poor. And all this to channel those tens of billions to the bankers and bondholders in the European financial markets to save their system from the consequences of their wild speculation and profiteering in the 10 to 15 years prior to the financial crash and causing that financial crash. Is it any wonder then that when fast food workers here in the United States, just about a year ago, heroically stood up for economic justice, workers throughout Ireland and throughout Europe took great notice and applauded? Against this background, is it any wonder that activists throughout the European labour movement and on the left cheered to the rafters when the ballot for $15 was victorious in CETAC, and when a marvellous campaign for 15 and for economic and social justice across all fronts propelled into the unwelcoming establishment of Seattle City Council Socialist Alternative Representative Sharma Sawan. Dear friends, I want you to know that your struggles, your campaigns, your mobilization here in Seattle and in the United States are inspirational to workers in Europe and indeed all over the world, including Latin America, where I know from associates that these struggles are making a tremendous impression. And among the left and working class people and activists outside of the United States, these movements and these successes are all the more applauded because they take place in the very heartland of world capitalism itself. And by the way, speaking of capitalism, I was astounded to be told during this visit of mine to the United States that the second biggest corporation on the globe, Walmart, in Ohio, has food collection bins and staff rooms at Thanksgiving, not for the indigent and the homeless, but for its own workers whom it maintains on poverty wages. So, not only do they make super profits on the backs of workers through systematic wage exploitation, but now they turn their workers into institutionalized beggars. What a criminal system that is. But brothers and sisters, we must look a little deeper. It is not just greed. So what drives Walmart's low wages? Why did Boeing seek to crush the pension rights of workers here in Seattle? It is to maintain and increase private profits for their major shareholders, which profits dig into the pockets of working people. And when working people demand just wages, that threatens those profits for the major institutionalized and other shareholders, and that is why they resist to the end. Why, in challenging poverty wages, we therefore have to challenge the basis of the capitalist system itself, which thrives on this exploitation. And we fight for alternatives to that system, which is to say, production. No more for rapacious private profits of Wall Street and corporate America and corporate Europe, but production for the benefit of the majority in society and to protect our environment and to give a decent and a dignified life to every human being, which is entirely possible. Therefore, I respectfully submit in our discussions that alongside marvellous campaigns like this, whether here and in Ireland or elsewhere, we do need to raise and to begin to discuss the need for democratic public ownership and control over big finance and big corporations. Of course, this is the very system that the political establishment in Europe and the politicians of the Republican and Democratic parties uphold and enshrine, therefore upholding and enshrining the kind of exploitation that goes along with it. And in Europe, it is not just now the traditional right-wing parties that are bailing out the bankers and bondholders on the backs of the working class, but shamefully, criminally, the Labour parties and the Social Democratic parties, founded 100 years ago and more by working people through immense sacrifice, they now have all gone over to the camp of neoliberalism. They are participating in governments, or have done all over Europe, in coalition governments, implementing vicious austerity programs to rescue finance capitalism from its crisis. That is why, not only now in the United States, but in Europe also, we have an historic responsibility to begin to discuss How do we fill this political void? Through the constructions of new mass parties of the working class, but this time, parties that are under the direct democratic control of their working class members and with elected representatives not making big careers at the expense of the working class, but living on the average industrial wage of an industrial worker as social representatives. So, dear friends, to sum up and to conclude, we are under pressure in Ireland. We are under pressure all over Europe as working class people. We have not yet en masse found the leadership that working class people deserve, which is to say, at this point, there is no trucking, there is no compromise with austerity. We have to stand uncompromisingly for no more bailouts of the bankers, of the financial institutions. We have to say the tens of billions that they ratcheted up in bad debt, that is not our debt, it is their debt, and our people must not pay those debts. We face big challenges, but together we face those challenges. I am confident that working class people will rise to those challenges, as you are proving to do here in Seattle with such dramatic effect. I wish you every success in the fight for 15, and also alongside that and into the future, in the related, even bigger fight to create a society on the basis of democratic socialist policies, where human beings can live in dignity, where there is care for the elderly and the sick, where there is a future for the youth, where there is protection for our ecology and our environment. All that is possible. All that is possible when working people take democratic control of these resources and eliminating the nightmare of private greed and the horrors that go with it throughout our world. We can then begin to build the type of society that we all would want for ourselves, for our children, and for future generations. That is what we are about, and it is beginning very much with 15. So let us go forward to victory for 15 this year in Seattle. And as speakers have said, that will resound from one corner of Europe to the next and right around the world to Latin America and Africa, because it means that here, in the very heartland of capitalism itself on a world basis, working class people are shown that it can be done, and we will all benefit massively and be inspired by that and emulate that in our own countries.
So without more ado, Robbie Stern.
So let me start up by seeing if you all can follow me. You know, I'm an old guy. See if you can stick with me. You just repeat after me. Power! 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 Power to the workers! Power to the workers! Power! 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 Power to the workers! Power to the workers! The workers' power! The workers' power! Is getting stronger by the hour! And there ain't enough 1% in the whole wide world. Stop the workers' power. For 50 $15. We're gonna fight. We're not gonna stop. Until we win. Power! Power! Power to the workers. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Find out what it means to me. Power! So, some of you may not have heard of Puget Sound Advocates for Retirement Action. Well, all of you who are members of PSARA, just wave your hand so people can know how many of you are here. PSARA is prepared to add our voice and our energy to the movement for a $15 minimum wage in the city of Seattle and ultimately for all of Washington State. PSARA is an organization of people from ages 21 to 96. We, through our collective activism, want to help create a just and peaceful world where all people can live with dignity and respect. PSARA is committed to working for economic and social justice, environmental sustainability, economic security, and equal rights and opportunities for retirees and future retirees. I think that's all of us, eh? The fight for a $15 minimum wage begins to address this transcendent crisis we face as a result of the inequitable distribution of wealth in our region and our country. PSARA stands ready to fight for the minimum wage, for the $15 minimum wage, just as we fought for the paid sick days legislation, and as we continue to fight for good family wage jobs for people during their working lives. PSARA also leads the fight in our region for preserving and strengthening our Social Security and Medicare systems so that seniors and future generations of seniors can live lives of dignity and respect and economic security. We stand ready to fight with you in this campaign for a $15 minimum wage. We also hope you will join with us in the campaigns that are presently going on and those that lie ahead as we take on the challenges to making our society one in which economic and social justice rains down like a mighty stream. Please join with us to fight for the ability of seniors and future seniors to live their lives with dignity, respect, and economic security. Let's win the $15 minimum wage and then take up the fight to create good family wage jobs as we take on the task of sustaining our environment from the ravages of our fossil fuel economy. We can win these battles if we stand together and we fight together, and we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Philip Locker, who is an organizer with Socialist Alternative. He was the political director of the wildly successful Kshama Sawant campaign. And if I'm not mistaken, he's not done yet. He's also going to be fighting for $15 an hour. The moment you meet Philip, you can tell he's a tireless and tenacious organizer, and the campaign is extremely lucky that he exists. Philip.
So what do we want?
15.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
15.
When do we want it?
Now.
Because the rent can't wait. Isn't it incredible how far we've come in 1 year? Imagine, put yourself back 1 year ago, and if we had said a year from now you'd be sitting in this hall with this room packed, with SeaTac passing a $15 ordinance, with fast food workers across the country going on strike, organizing, protests in cities across the country, including here in Seattle, and for an open, independent, socialist, and working class candidate to be elected on the mandate of $15, would you believe me? We have a mayor, the first mayor of a major city in the country, who was elected on a promise of $15 an hour. Would you have believed that? The momentum we have is breathtaking. You know, it's quite an answer to all those who say social change takes time. You have to be patient. We're going to hear that a lot this year about raising the minimum wage. We have to be patient. We can't ask for... In a matter of months, we have changed the conversation. We have changed the terms of debate, not just in Seattle, nationwide. And we will do that even more this year. Everyone says, and I would actually urge, we have a note of caution, and don't believe what you always hear in the media. But if you listen to the media, it's as if 15 is inevitable, that there's nothing going to stop it, right? Now that's a measure of our success. That's a measure of the pressure, of the movement, of the political momentum we have created. But we have not won 15 yet, have we? We have a long way to go. And the reason it's even being talked about now, let's not be naive, it's not out of the goodness of politicians or corporations' hearts that they're now talking about this. We just need to look next door to SeaTac. How much money did Alaska Airlines and the Washington Restaurant Association spend to defeat that? Millions. And even now, after the voters have spoken, they refuse to accept the democratic voice of the majority of SeaTac, and they're taking it to court. They're spending millions and more. And that's not some foreign country, SeaTac. The same bosses who are leading that campaign in SeaTac, some of them are on the advisory committee that the mayor appointed to create a $15 an hour minimum wage in Seattle. So I don't know about you, that sounds like schizophrenia to me. They're doing one thing in SeaTac, and in Seattle they claim they support 15. Well, we have to hold them to that and make sure that actually gets delivered, and it gets delivered quickly this year. So the message of this campaign of 15 now, look, the politicians, the business leaders, they're having plenty of discussion. They're meeting all the time. They're working out their plans. They're working out their arguments. They're testing how they can confuse the majority of workers. They're testing how they can undermine this. They have their organizations. We need our own organizations, an organization that's completely 100% on the side of working people, of low-wage workers, that's going to fight. We deserve organizations that will fight just as hard as Alaska Airlines and Washington Restaurant Associations, how they fight to defend their profits. Is that right? Yes. And that's the role that 15 Now is going to carve out for itself, to be a grassroots campaign, not just for this to be settled at the top by politicians and business leaders and representatives, but to build a movement, a tool, an organization for every single one of you, for every single low-wage worker, for every single neighborhood activist, young people, to get involved and make this your struggle. And that is and I would urge you, 15 Now is your campaign. It's our campaign. This is our chance to make history. If we win $15 in Seattle this year, let's be clear what the stakes are. It's not about Seattle, though it would lift up tens of thousands of Seattle workers out of poverty. It would open the floodgates nationwide. Is that something you want? And that's why business will fight this tooth and nail, brothers and sisters. That's why we can't have any illusions that this can happen just because there's a few good-hearted people in the city who are saying they want to do it. It's up to us to make this happen, and that means building this movement. So I just want to outline a little bit what the 15 Now campaign is planning and how people can get involved. This is, as I said, it's a tool for ordinary people, ordinary workers to come together and discuss and debate and educate ourselves and organize and take collective action. Immediately, we have in front of us, a week from tomorrow, next Monday, January 20th, there's the Martin Luther King Day holiday. And in Seattle, we're privileged that we have a yearly protest. Let's remember when MLK was killed, despite the whitewashing you hear in the media, he was fighting for workers' rights. He was fighting for, what's that magic number that's just been pulled from thin air? $15. He was fighting for unions, for workers' rights, on the Poor People's Campaign. And on that day, there's going to be a major demonstration in Seattle. We need, and we have, a $15 contingent at that. Let's bring down the House. Let's have hundreds of people at that rally in the $15 contingent. So I want to ask people here, I want you to raise your hand and holler if are you... Thousands, yes. Sorry. I accept your challenge. Who here is going to be there? Raise your hand and let's hear it. Now here's the key. Every single one of you needs to bring 5 other people with you. I want to hear, are you prepared to bring 5 people with you to have those thousands? The next step is we want to form neighborhood action groups. Groups that can begin to organize in every neighborhood, in every community, in every school, to come together and educate people. There's going to be a propaganda war. Business is going to unleash all their arguments. We cannot defeat them unless we have our own independent grassroots movement that gets out there talking neighbor to neighbor, worker to worker, answering their lies, making the case for 15, and winning people to our movement. And the backbone of that has to be these neighborhood groups where we can really organize ourselves, educate ourselves, arm ourselves with those arguments. So there's sign-up sheets I'm sure you saw on the way in. They'll be circulated again. Please sign up to commit to come on January 20th to get more information about the campaign, but critically to commit to being one of the organizers of a neighborhood action group. And we will be in touch with you. We will help you set that up. We will help have meetings to educate and train the organizers of the neighborhood groups, and to have meetings throughout February to lay the basis for town halls, to get out and reach out to the broad public and win a strong majority, the overwhelming majority who this issue's in our interests. Is that right? Yeah. Now the final thing I just want to lay out to people of sort of the vision that some of the founders and launchers of this campaign have is obviously there's a whole debate taking place in the city right now on 15. And we hope and we want to bring the maximum pressure to make sure that goes successfully, that a city ordinance is passed this year, the first half of this year, and not some watered down, diluted 15 in name only ordinance, but a real ordinance, right? But that is only going to happen if we build a strong movement, a powerful movement, as I've been saying. But we also have to be ready. We've seen again and again We can't rely on the politicians. While we want to push them, we want them to deliver. If they don't, are we going to accept that? No! We can take it to the ballot. We can have our own ballot initiative if the politicians fail to carry out what we want. And we have a tight timeline to get something on the ballot for November 2014, which is way too long to be waiting, if you ask me. I'm not that patient. But that's the legal law. November 2014. We need to file it in July, early July. We need 30,000 signatures. That means we have to start collecting those signatures in April, May, and June. So look, we're saying very clearly to Mayor Murray's advisory committee on this and to the city council and the mayor, you have till April to present a strong, adequate $15 an hour minimum wage. And let's keep the pressure up so they do. But if they don't, we need to come together again in April. We need to have a series of meetings, grassroots meetings, town halls, a conference of all those who are involved in this struggle to democratically discuss and debate in April, how do we proceed? Do we need to go ahead with the ballot initiative? That will be something that will have to be democratically discussed and debated in this movement. But if we decide to go ahead, 15 now will have laid the basis, the infrastructure, to do a mass campaign of signature gathering, and once we get that on the ballot, to make the case to tens of thousands of people in Seattle, in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces. So will you step up? Will you join us in this campaign? I'll just end on this. There's not many times that you have the opportunity to truly turn the tide of history. And I appeal, we owe it to all the workers of this country. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the future. It's up to us. This is not going to happen unless you, unless all of us commit and make a serious commitment. In 2014, what is your priority? What is my priority? It's going to take a determined effort. It's going to take thousands of people, and each and one of us in this room is the seed of that, to really build the kind of movement that can win this and reverse the corporate offensive we've been facing for 30 years.